First of all, I welcome you all students on this lecture series of engineering chemistry. Today onwards, daily unit-wise sessions we are conducting.
We are taking engineering chemistry lectures for Arvind Gowli College of Engineering, Satara. My name is Professor Surendra Kokne. I am working in PUPIT College, Pune.
I run a YouTube channel that is Chemistry with SK, where almost all the videos of SPPU, Pune University syllabus of engineering chemistry are available. And when last year the lockdown was started, so at that time Pune University has appealed to many of the professors if they are having any digital content, so they can share. And accordingly, my video lecture series is available on the Pune University portal on digital content development section. So let us proceed further. As we have to see water technology as our first chapter, first unit. Before starting further, I would like to ask you which are the various sources of water. And I think that you must understand each and everything. Understanding is the most important, because only mugging up the things and present in the examination, that is not the case. We can say that is not an important thing. We should understand, and that is everybody's duty to understand, get it clarified, all the difficulties, all the queries. So tell me, what are the various sources of water? Rainwater, right? Correct. Again,
Actually, you should try to answer. It may be correct, it may be wrong, but you must answer.
when we are making mistake, we are learning something, or we are remembering that we have made mistake. So what is the correct thing? What is the right answer? And accordingly, we are learning, we are remembering many things. So just have conversation, proper conversation. River water. Okay.
Groundwater.
Correct. Okay. So we can say the surface water, ground or underground water, and rainwater can be some of the sources, main sources of water, right? So without wasting much time in these introductory slides, we'll proceed further. That, as you know, the sources of water, there can be surface water, underground water, and rainwater. So surface water may have the lakes, ponds, various reservoirs like dams and etc. Then rivers, sea, etc. So these are the surface water sources, we can say. And underground sources, they can be tube wells or bore wells, right? And rainwater. So these are some of the sources of water. So as this is introductory part, now as per our syllabus, we have to proceed further to the concept of hardness. But before seeing the concept of hardness, we have to see what is meant by soft water and hard water. So you many times have identified, or we can say we have seen in the advertisements
Of detergents and washing soda. So they mention that there is a more foam or jada jhag, jada sapedi likewise. So what is it?
इस तरह से कुछ advertisements करते हैं, right? So the concept lies in between the quality of water. The quality of water should be best not only for industrial applications but also for day-to-day applications. And accordingly, if water is faulty, if water is not suitable, then what will be the problems? That also we have to study, right? We'll see what is meant by hard water and soft water. Though you know it, we are just revising it in short, right? The hard water, we know that it does not form much lather with the soap solution, and soft water can form much lather. It means if you are washing the clothes, then the cleansing action will depend on foam formation capacity. If more foam is formed or more foam is possible, in that case the cleansing action will be faster, or we can say more, as compared to the hard water. One more important thing, when water is hard, at that time it forms some precipitate that we call it as scum. When we are using borewell water, बोरचं जर पाणी असेल, and if we are trying to wash the clothes, at that time during washing of clothes, when we are applying soap to the clothes, some sticky material or some white particles are deposited, or they are formed, okay, that are formed as a precipitate. So that is called as a scum. And how it is formed? That is formed due to the hardness causing salts, and that they react with the soap, and there is formation of such precipitate. If such precipitate is formed, it means that there is and that contains some hardness causing metal ions, and that water is said to be hard, so it will not form much lather with the soap solution. Then we can say it will contain some soluble salts of some calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, etc. While the soft water will not contain such dissolved salts of calcium and magnesium. It means if certain salts are present like calcium, magnesium and iron, zinc, etc., then that water is supposed to be hard water. So in hard water, we know that cleansing properties are depressed, that as I mentioned, and that is not useful. So most of the amount of soap is wasted. Most of the amount of soap is wasted, and here in case of soft water, the cleansing action will be, or we can say cleansing capacity will be much better, and it will not be depressed. So it is due to dissolved hardness causing salts, but you might know that if boiling water, it means that many properties are also changing. As you all learned in 12th class about the solution and colligative properties. One of the colligative property we discussed, elevation of boiling point. It means if water contains impurity, then the boiling point will be elevated, increase. And why I am correlating this? It means that these are some basic concepts which you already know, which we have already seen in previous classes. So while seeing these concepts, that are to be applied here. So when such a hard water is there, it means hardness causing salts are there, ions are there, metal ions are there, and that are acting as a solute particles. And you know that on addition of solute into water or solvent, there is increase in boiling point. So increase in boiling point, why it is harmful here, or you can say non-beneficial? If you have to have the steam, especially in industrial applications, if you see use of water, mainly two uses of water are there. One as steam generation and other as a coolant. It means if you have to generate a steam, we need to boil the water, and during boiling, we need to heat the boiler at higher temperature. So there is a wastage of heat, wastage of energy and time and etc. So that's why that is not expected. So here, if you are using soft water, we can save the fuel and the time also, maybe for cooking or for other applications. So first of all, we have to see the disadvantages of hard water. Now, we know that water is mainly useful in domestic applications or industrial applications. So we have to see the disadvantages of hard water in domestic use and the industrial use. Okay. So let us see one by one. So these can be various domestic applications or domestic use of water in washing, bathing, cooking, drinking. We know that as I have mentioned earlier, that if you are washing the clothes, the cleansing action is required. Washing of we can say clothes or utensils, much of the foam should be formed, otherwise the cleansing action will be reduced. Okay, it means how much lather is being formed, that is very important in cleansing or washing the things. In bathing application also, if we are using hard water, then that will not form much lather with the soap solution, and that's why there can be formation of sticky scum or sticky precipitate. If such a sticky precipitate is formed on during bathing, then we feel uncomfortable. Okay, आपल्याला असं वाटेल की अंगाला असं काहीतरी चिकटपणा आलाय किंवा चांगलं क्लीन झालं नाहीये. So these things may happen. Similarly, in case of cooking, the boiling point is increased. It means more time will require for cooking, and hardness causing salts may get precipitated inside the pressure cooker or these cooking utensils. Such things may be happening. Then in drinking applications, as you know, if we are using hard water, that is having bad effect in our digestive system, and that may form some calcium oxalate type of crystals, and we may have to suffer from some diseases related to urinary tract, that what you call it as kidney stone and etc. Similarly, in industrial applications also, this water is being used. So as we can say textile industry, sugar industry, dyeing industry, paper industry, laundry, concrete making, pharmaceutical industry, there also some adverse effects are there. So you can remember the points. Hope you are also appearing for multiple choice question type of examination. And the main thing, as I always say, that understanding is more important. If you understand the thing, you will remember them automatically. Okay. So The textile industry, you know that the yarn and fabric is there that needs to be washed. It means it is related to washing. जे काही कपडे आपण तयार होणार आहेत टेक्सटाईल इंडस्ट्री मध्ये, सो दॅट क्लोथ्स आर टू बी clean. Okay, that should be clean, and that's why the detergents may be useful. So if hard water is there, then there may be some scum formations, काही डाग पडतील त्याच्यावरती. Okay, so colored spots may be appearing on the fabric. In case of sugar industry, as you know, water may contain or water containing sulfates and nitrates, etc. If it is used in refining, then that will cause some difficulties in the crystallization of sugar, and the crystallization, we can say, that will become deliquescent. Deliquescent means that sugar will have the property of absorbing moisture from air, and that will look like wet sugar. Okay. Then in dyeing industry, as we know, various types of dyes are to be used on, we can say, clothes or for various applications. So in dyeing industry, if such a hardness causing salts are present, that will be very harmful. Magnesium, calcium and iron from hard water, that will be reacting with the dye, and that may be damaging the dye, or we can say costly dyes, and sometimes faulty shades or faulty, we can say, spots may appear on the dyed clothes, or we can say dyed material. Similarly, on the paper industry, as you know, calcium and magnesium salts are reacting with the chemicals to provide smooth and glossy finish to the paper. But iron salts are, if present in the water, then the paper quality is damaged, or we can say paper will have some spots. Okay, unwanted spots may be observed. Okay, laundry. So we know that laundry is related to cleaning, that like household application. So that we know already that hard water is not suitable for cleaning the clothes. Then concrete making. As you know, concrete industry for building material that needs good quality, and the hydration process of cement is required for the better strength, and that's why the concrete will be hardened. But if there is a faulty water, hard water, then there will be some problem to the concrete making also, and that will not have much better strength. In pharmaceutical industry, we know that various drugs, or we can say injections, ointments, various medicines are to be prepared for various diseases, and that also require good quality water for dissolving certain things. Okay, so these are the disadvantages of hard water in the industrial use. Mainly, one more thing is there, if you are using steam generation in boilers, so boiler may have such 4 adverse effects. I think this part is not for your syllabus, but just as overview I have given. Otherwise, this is individual question for lengthy question for 4 to 6 marks. So scale and sludge formation, boiler corrosion, priming and foaming, and caustic embrittlement. These are the adverse effects on the boiler. It means if hard water is being added into the boiler, then such type of problems may arise with the boiler. Okay. Okay. So let us proceed further with these disadvantages. Now we'll see about the concept of hardness of water. So what is exactly hardness? As we know, what is meant by hard water, that we have seen to some extent. So it is, we can say, hardness is nothing but lather forming capacity of water when it is treated with soap. And it is due to presence of various dissolved salts of heavy metal ions. Which metal ions are considered to be heavy? Okay. Which heavy metal ions are there, or which ions are considered as heavy metal ions? So we can say the calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, manganese, all are in plus 2 oxidation state, and aluminum in plus 3 oxidation state. These can be some of the heavy metal ions which can form hardness, or which can depart hardness to the water. And these heavy metal ions may be in the form of their either carbonate, bicarbonate, sulfate, nitrates, and chlorides. So if such materials are present in water, that water is said to be hard water, or that salts are imparting hardness to the water. Hard water, we know that we have already seen this, that hard water does not produce the foam or lather easily with the soap, because it forms the sticky white precipitate, which we call it as scum. And rainwater, distilled water, or softened water will form the foam or the lather easily with the soap solution, and that's why that can be said to be soft water. So there are some causes of hardness. Why water becomes hard? Rainwater is passing in the ground, under the ground, that and at that time that may be passing through some rocks and minerals, and that's why some minerals get added. Sometimes the carbon dioxide and oxygen may be combined from the air, or we can say atmosphere, and that's why such type of some materials may be formed, and that's why the water may become hard, or these are the various causes of hardness. Now the main thing or important thing, that is types of hardness. Remember well that that there are two types of hardness. One is said to be temporary hardness, and other is said to be permanent hardness. So the temporary hardness is also called as carbonate hardness, and permanent hardness is also called as non-carbonate hardness. So let us proceed. What is meant by temporary hardness? What is the definition for that? Hardness of water due to presence of soluble carbonates and bicarbonate salts. It means we can say if there is a presence of some bicarbonate and soluble carbonate salts of heavy metal ions, then that is said to be temporary hardness. So the examples like we can say calcium bicarbonate, magnesium bicarbonate, magnesium carbonate, iron carbonate, that can be the examples for this type of hardness, that is temporary or carbonate hardness. So how to remove this temporary hardness? We remember that that is possible by boiling the water. If you boil the water, what happens? So on boiling the water, if it contains some hardness causing salts that are converting into such type of precipitates, okay, that are forming into such type of precipitate. For example, you can see the magnesium bicarbonate, which was soluble material, that on boiling converts to magnesium hydroxide. Magnesium carbonate also convert into magnesium hydroxide, calcium bicarbonate into calcium carbonate. It means in this way there is formation of some precipitates, and that's why we say that the temporary hardness is removed. How it is removed? Because these temporary hardness causing materials have been converted into permanent hardness causing material, or either they are that any type of hardness is removed. Here, as per our definitions, which particles or which heavy metals we have considered, as we can say heavy metal ions, Fe+2 iron, magnesium, calcium, then manganese, calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc also, and aluminum. So if this type of metal cations are forming the salts or compounds with carbonate, bicarbonate, sulfate, nitrate, chloride, then there can be possibility of we can say hardness. But as per the definition of temporary hardness, which materials are responsible for temporary hardness? Any of these metal salts, or we can say all of these metal salts may be responsible for temporary hardness. But in which form? In the form of soluble carbonate salts and bicarbonate salts only. It means other salts like sulfates, nitrates, chlorides, etc., then that will be responsible for permanent hardness. Okay. So let us see the permanent hardness definition. It is due to presence of dissolved salts other than carbonates and bicarbonates. It means carbonate and bicarbonates are responsible for temporary hardness, and remaining salts are responsible for, it means sulfates, nitrates, chlorides, that are responsible for these permanent hardness. Why this carbonate hardness is called as temporary, or we can say why temporary hardness is called as carbonate hardness? The main reason is temporary hardness is temporary. It is for a small time, or it can be removed by boiling the water. So it is called as temporary hardness. Why it is called as carbonate hardness? Because it is due to various carbonate and bicarbonate salts. Okay, bicarbonates are also a form of carbonates, you can say. So carbonates and bicarbonates are responsible for hardness, and that's why that is said to be carbonate hardness. Similarly, about the permanent hardness, the examples: calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, calcium sulfate, etc., etc. It means any of the combinations can be there that will be responsible for non-carbonate or for permanent hardness. Okay. Is there any doubt regarding any example? I am focusing this example. You can ask. Do you have any doubt regarding the calcium carbonate? Because all the carbonates and bicarbonates, it means most of the carbonates and bicarbonates are coming in this particular category, but only calcium carbonate is coming in this permanent hardness. Do you know the reason? Okay, at least you should know the reason, and you should remember that this can be exceptional case, and the main reason behind this is, in case of calcium carbonate, this is not water soluble. It is very slightly soluble in water, and as per the definition here, the requirement of temporary hardness is that carbonate salt should be soluble in water, and here it is not soluble in water, therefore it is not coming in this category, and it's coming in this particular category. And one more thing, justification is, once the calcium bicarbonate is present here, that is converted into calcium carbonate. Okay, if the calcium carbonate would be available here, then it would not be the decrease in temporary hardness, or we can say removal of temporary hardness. Okay, so as we have seen, removal can be possible for the temporary hardness, and that is by boiling. Similarly, the permanent hardness can be removed by using some chemical treatments or some chemical methods. And we know that this is the total hardness, temporary hardness plus permanent hardness is equal to total hardness. These are units of hardness: milligrams per liter, ppm, ppb. ppm stands for parts per million, parts per billion. You know it already. Milligrams per liter is nothing but parts per million, because milligrams per liter is nothing is coming to be ppm. And if you if it is to be calculated for the examination point of view, we can say, then milligrams of CaCO3 equivalent, it means here the hardness of water can be determined in terms of calcium carbonate equivalent, and for that these are the two formulae. This formula can be useful for any type of salt, any type of impurity, that weight of impurity or chemical multiplied by 50 upon equivalent weight of that particular chemical. And if the salt is bivalent, then this formula is useful only for bivalent salt, that milligrams of CaCO3 equivalent equal to weight of impurity into 100 upon molecular weight of the chemical. It means, what is the difference between these two? If bivalent salt is there, then you can use this, but basic difference between these two is, here the term 50 is there and here it is coming to be 100, and here is the equivalent weight and here it is a molecular weight. Many times you feel that equivalent weight calculation may be somewhat difficult to you, because there are various terms, various types of species, and accordingly it may be difficult. So it can be better to you, and we can say all our hardness causing metal salts are almost bivalent except aluminium. So now we will see the concept of determination of hardness of water by ADTA method. So the basic principle behind this is, the calcium and magnesium like hardness causing heavy metal ions that are forming unstable complexes with the indicator, that EBD indicator which we are using. So EDTA and these calcium magnesium salts can react together and they will form some stable complex. So it is possible to add some EDTA material, EDTA molecules into the water, so that there will be removal of some hardness causing metal ions in the form of some complex. Metal EDTA complex is formed, although we are not removing it separately or completely, still that will be removed in the form of that particular salt. So we'll proceed. So determination of hardness of water, the theory, it is the complexometric titration. Actually, this can be one of the multiple choice question, that what type of titration it is. So you remember that it is complexometric titration, because there is a formation of complex. Okay, once there is a formation of complex, it is said to be complexometric titration. We need to use buffer solution of about 10 pH. Then disodium salt of EDTA we have to use. One more question, another question possible is, here though we are using or saying EDTA method, but remember that this is not the EDTA. We are using disodium EDTA salt in the titration, because normal EDTA molecule is not suitable for the titration. You know why? This can be a question in the multiple choice questions, because we'll see in the next slide with the structure. So indicator required here, we can use EBT indicator, that is Erichrome black tea. Okay, टी ह्या टीचा लॉंग फॉर्म नाही घ्यायचा, चहा किती आवडत असला तरी सुद्धा, जास्त ना पार्ले जी, तसं इरिकोरम ब्लॅक टी, राईट. सो this is the EBT indicator, it is an organic dye, and if you are using this indicator, then the pH of solution water should be 10, or we can say buffer solution pH should be 10, Another indicator is also there, that is known as Calcon, and if you are using that indicator, then we can say pH of buffer solution requirement is 12.5. Okay. EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, CH2 single bond CH2, now it is N, and here there will be CH2 COOH group. Similarly, CH2 COOH. There will be 4 hydrogen atoms which can be replaceable or which can be replaced. CH2 COOH, CH2 COOH. Either you show by this way or by this way, doesn't matter. So here it is said to be hexadentate ligand because it is having 6 reactive sites, or it can join to the metal by 6 reactive sites, by 6 sides. Okay, how? These 4 hydrogen atoms can be replaced. Okay, these 4 hydrogen atoms can be replaced, and there will be joining from by these sides. So 4 sides are the active, and these 2 nitrogens will be present as we can say lone pair of electron is present here. So in this way, by 6 sides, the metal, this ligand can join to the metal. So this is said to be hexadentate ligand. But remember that this is EDTA and this is not soluble in water. Therefore, we cannot use it. So what we have to use? We have to use disodium salt of EDTA. It means Na2-EDTA we have to use. How to prepare it? It will be sodium salt, disodium salt. It means 2 hydrogens will be replaced. Okay, I can say these 2 hydrogens will be replaced and there is 2 sodium. And in this way, it becomes disodium salt. Now, this disodium salt of EDTA is soluble in water, or we can say it is highly soluble in water, and therefore we can use it for the titration. Okay. Many students find difficult about the structure of complex. When this metal and EDTA complex is formed, I will show you how to draw the structure. See here. Let us consider I am having some metal here, metal 2 plus ion suppose, and how many reactive sites are there? 6 reactive sites. It means from this side there can be formation of a bond, this side, then this hydrogen is replaced, so this side, so this side, and from this side. In this way, there can be 6 bonds. It means as the structure we basically know, and we have just formed the bonds from the respective locations, respective reactive sites. So anybody can draw this structure of metal EDTA complex now. But if you see the structure or diagram from book, especially this particular structure, then it becomes difficult to understand itself. Okay, so it is easy to understand. So here I have given some shortcuts. What is the shortcut? If you remember these 4 things, you can remember the entire process. Burette, conical flask, indicator, and endpoint. So what is in the burette? We have to fill disodium EDTA in the burette. Conical flask, we have to take standard hard water sample, or it may be 25 ml of or 10 ml of whatever the amount you take. Zinc sulfate or magnesium sulfate solution, then buffer solution, and we have to add indicator. On addition of indicator, solution becomes pink red or wine red, and that we have to titrate till it becomes blue. And when it becomes blue, we have to note the reading as V1 ml. And this is the first part. Then what is the second part? This particular part is over. Now we have to use another solution. Burette will contain the same solution. This is for standardization. First part is for standardization of EDTA, and second part is for determination of actual hardness of water. You can test your water sample from your bottle also you can test in the laboratory. So here disodium EDTA is in the burette, and your water sample, whatever the water sample you want to test, that you have to take in the conical flask, 15 ml of buffer solution, and the EBT indicator is to be added. Again, the endpoint is same, and at that time you have to note the reading as YML. So this is the particular we can say experimentation part or procedural part. If you see the reactions are when metal is there, metal ions are present in the water that are reacting with EBT indicator. So EBT and metal, there is formation of metal EBT complex with pink red or wine red color. and H plus ions are released. So the released H plus ions may change the pH of water, and that's why we are using buffer solution, because we know that buffer solution, use of buffer solution will prevent the change of pH, right? And that is the work of, that is the role of buffer solution. Then now remember that we have taken small quantity of EBT indicator in your conical flask. So small quantity of metal and metal ions will combine with that, forming metal EBT complex, and remaining metal ions are reacting with EDTA. EDTA we are adding from burette, so that are forming colorless molecule as metal EDTA complex. Metal and EDTA, metal EDTA complex is formed. But when the entire metals from the water sample, or we can say conical flask, will be over, at that time what will happen? Because there is no more metal ions, but we don't know. We are going on adding the EDTA solution. As EDTA solution we are adding from burette, so at that time no metal ions are present. So what is available there? Metal EBT complex is available, and we have seen that this metal EBT complex is we can say unstable complex. So that will break, this bond will break, and metal EBT bond will be broken, and metal EDTA complex will be formed, and this EBT indicator will be released as free. Okay, so color of this EDTA, metal EDTA complex still is colorless, but the as indicator is released, and indicator is of red, blue color, and that's why at the end point we observe blue color. Okay, so these are the reactions. The standardization of EDTA, this can be the formula M1 equal to M2 V2. By using this formula, we can find out the concentration of EDTA. Okay, because all these things will be known. Burette reading from the first part, and the concentration of magnesium sulfate or zinc sulfate you have taken. Volume of EDTA, how much is the burette reading, and how much of the volume of magnesium sulfate solution taken. Accordingly, we can find out the value of M1, or we can say concentration of EDTA, and that we can put here. So here Z is nothing but the concentration of EDTA. We can have different we can say notations probably. So this is the final formula for second part, that hardness equal to Y upon V into Z into 100 into 1000. You may say 100 into 1000 at 10 raised to 5, doesn't matter, but you should remember the significance of each part from the equation, because whenever you have to solve some numericals, smaller numericals, at that time you must know the significance, and there we are making mistake. We forget the significance of the equation, and that's why we are having difficulty in solving the questions, or we can say solving the doubts, we can say numericals. So you must take care that significance should be known. Okay, so in this way, this determination of hardness of water is over. If you want to go in, actually, as this is just the revision lecture series. So if you want the detailed lectures, then these lectures in detail are available on our YouTube channel. You can watch it anytime. Okay, so let us proceed to the next part. Now we have to give treatment to the water. We have seen that what is hardness. Okay, hardness is not good. It is we can say harmful, we can say. So determination of hardness we have seen. Now if water is hard, what to do, or then how to treat the water, how to make the purification of water. So we can say for that there is a zeolite process, and zeolite is nothing but it is, we can say, sodium zeolite material. Various types of zeolites are present, are available, out of which we are using sodium zeolite, and that has a property of capturing heavy metal ions, and in addition to that, or we can see in replacement with that, Na plus ions are coming down. This method is also called as permutates. So we'll proceed with the, this is the structure, Na2O.Al2O3.XaSiO2 Yes, you can remember it in easier way, because what is meant by zeolites? Zeolites are actually hydrated complexes of metal silicates and metal aluminates. Hydrated complex, hydra means water, so hydrated complexes of metal silicate and metal aluminate. It means metal, silica, and metal alumina is also there. So this is metal, it's silica, it's alumina, and this hydrated complex. So we can remember the structure. So we'll see the procedure. We are using this is the zeolite bed, sodium zeolite bed, and here we can take the outlet or treated water. So hard water we are adding from this side. So when hard water will be added, hardness causing metal ions will be captured. Here, all the heavy metal ions will be captured inside this zeolite bed, and instead of that, in exchange of that, Na plus ions will be coming down, because Na plus ions are present in the zeolite which are loosely bound, and that Na plus ions are coming down. So water which will be treated water, this outlet is to be opened and this valve is to be opened, and we have to take it as a treated water or softened water. The water gets softened, not purified, because it contains some impurity. Which impurity? Sodium salt is coming as impurity here. So though here hardness is removed, but it contains some sodium impurities. After some time, all the Na plus ions which are present here, that will come down and no Na plus will remain here. So at that stage, the purification, or we can say softening process, will stop. So we need to have regeneration by using NaCl solution. So NaCl, what will it do? So Na plus ions will be refilled again, and then this will be again useful for further softening of water. When we are adding NaCl, at that time we have to close this valve and we have to open this and we have to take it as washing of bed, right? So these are the reactions. Sometimes you find that reactions are difficult, but these reactions are very, very easy and you don't have to worry about the reactions. I will tell you some things. Either you can write the impurity in the ionic form or in the salt form, doesn't matter. Accordingly, you have to write the valence reactions. What happens? There is exchange reaction only. Okay, Na plus Na2Zd, it means Na and zeolite that are separated. It means sodium ion is separated from zeolite, and there is exchange reaction. Sodium comes here, magnesium comes here. So if magnesium is coming here to the zeolite, it means magnesium is attached to zeolite and it is forming magnesium zeolite, right? And sodium is released in the water. So sodium salts are coming as an impurity in the water. Similarly, other cations can also be captured. And when we are regenerating it by using NaCl, at that time we can see the reaction Na plus, and it means the cations are, we have to show Na plus will come here, magnesium will come here. So Na plus and this zeolite will be refilled again. Na will get their places at their places again, and zeolite will be refilled again with the Na plus, and we can say it becomes Na2Zd again as it was there at the initial stage. In this way, with the help of NaCl, there is a regeneration of zeolite material. This method is also called as Formutit method. If you see the advantages, it is clean, quick process, low cost operating process. The initially no any analysis is required. Directly we can test the water, or we can say directly purify water. And there is one test that zeolite bed can be tested whether it is active or exhausted by the soap solution, and its softener occupies a small space. Okay. Then there are some limitations that warm water or acidified water should not be added because it will decompose the zeolite material. The manganese or iron-like ions are getting captured permanently. So these type of ions, if are present in the water, that should not be added in the zeolite bed. Then if there is a turbid water, that will block the micro holes. And output water is not having almost sometimes zero hardness. It may have 0 to 10 ppm of hardness. It means it is, if you compare with the next method, that is demineralization method, this may have some hardness may remain. Okay, so these are some applications that can be useful for removing hardness causing salts or toxic dimetal ions and cations, dications from water. The next method is demineralization method. Here the name itself, demineralization, D, loss. Okay, what to lose? Minerals, ions are to be lost. It is also called as ion exchange process. So here we are using cation exchanger resin and anion exchanger resin. Okay, so let us see what is meant by cation exchanger resin. These are the structures of cation exchanger resin which contain loosely bound SO3H group or COH group. Here you can see these are the aromatic or sulfonated rings. Aromatic rings are present to the polymer chain, to which sulfonyl acid group or carboxylic acid groups can be present, in which H plus ion is loosely bound. This can be short form for these molecules, or we can say short formula. And the anion exchanger resin can have such type of quaternary ammonium group. Quaternary means 4. As you know, valency for nitrogen is 3 in ammonia, but if it is forming one more bond, then it becomes 4, that is quaternary. But if when it becomes 4, we can say when it forms 4 bonds, it will have a positive charge. So to balance that positive charge, one hydroxide ion will also be there in the form of ionic bond. So here in short, loosely bound OH minus ion is present. So we'll see the process. Here, this partition, or we can say this particular part, contains cation exchanger bed, and this contains anion exchanger bed. Okay. When the hard water is being added from this side, all the cations will be captured here, and H plus ions will come down. As in previous case, Na plus ions were coming down, here H plus ions are coming down. No any other cation will come down. Okay, some anions may come down because anions are not captured here because it is only cation exchanger bed. So this will capture all cations, and instead of all cations, that H plus ions will come down. Then that are added here, H plus ions and anions and other anionic impurities can be present. Here that will capture all anions, and instead of that anions, OH minus will come down. It means in this particular process, H plus and OH minus ions are coming down. All the cationic impurity and anionic impurity are captured in the this exchanger regions, and that's why we can say there is a demineralization, complete removal of ions. But as in the previous case, this process will also have some limitations. This will stop when all H plus ions are over, on when all OH minus ions are over. So we can say, you can have another question, that what can be used for regeneration of this cation exchanger bed and regeneration of anion exchanger bed. So for regeneration of cation exchanger bed, we need H plus ions, and H plus ions are available in acids, so we can use dilute acids. HCl, H2SO4 can be added here. While here OH minus ions are available in the base, so NaOH can be added, dilute NaOH solution. At that time, this valve are to be closed and these washings are to be removed. If gaseous impurities are present in the water, they can be removed by using degasifier, and we are getting pure water by using this particular technique. Okay. So these can be the reactions. Reactions are simple, just exchange reaction. Na plus ikde, H2 ikde. It means H2H plus ikde. So Na plus and R, Na2R will be formed, and H plus ions are released. Similarly, Cl minus ions are coming here. So hydroxide ion, because if you are putting chloride ion or negative ion, anion in this case adding here, so negative ion from this is to be added, so OH minus ions are to be removed, so it becomes, or we can say there is release of OH minus ions, and in this way the process of cation exchanger and anion exchanger may be taking place. And during regeneration, when we are adding H plus ions, similarly just cross combination, H plus will come here, Na will come here, so Na and Cl will form NaCl, and H and R will form H2R according to valency. So NaOH, in case of NaOH, OH minus will come here, Cl2 will come here, so Na and Cl will form again NaCl, OH, and this R will form R dash OH twice. That we can say this is a symbolic representation for anion exchanger resin, and this has cation exchanger resin. So if you see the advantages, this method is giving water of zero hardness or no ionic impurities, complete removal of water, and 0 ppm hardness water we can get here. It means we can say, if water is passed through degasifier, then we can get the water of distilled quality standard, or we can say highly pure water we can get. Okay, small space, easy operating process, but limitations, initial investment is high, and the process can be operated only for small scale purification, because if you want to have large scale purification, that needs to be regenerated time to time. Okay, then the next method is lime soda method. Actually, for your syllabus, we have only hot lime soda method, so we'll shift directly. You know the basic things regarding this. So I will just explain the diagram for hot lime soda process. I will not explain the things. It means I will not dictate the things. Here there are 3 parts of this particular instrument. This can be the first part, this can be the second part, and we can say this can be the third part. Here in this part, we are adding some chemicals, that lime and soda, that are to be added here. the raw water or feed water is passed here. Superheated steam is to be passed, so that due to heat and due to these chemicals, whatever the hardness causing salts, or we can say precipitates are there, that will react here, and there will be formation of some scum or precipitate. So that can be in the form of sludge. So this precipitate will come down. This precipitate will come down from this part, and that will be settle at the bottom. Precipitate that will come at the bottom. So that can be, the sludge can be taken out, and remaining water, which will be we can say free from such a precipitate, that can be that can be passed into this compartment. Here there are various layers. Okay, there are gravels, or we can say there are various layers like various filters, sand filters, fine sand filters, coarse material, etc., where this water is further softened, or we can say this water is further purified, and filtered water can be we get filtered water, or we can say highly softened water, by using hot lime soda process. So here the precipitate of the calcium or magnesium salts may be coming, and in this way that is about the hot lime soda process. Okay, so you know this theoretical part already, and the advantages or disadvantages of this. Then the last part of your syllabus, I think it is dissolved oxygen, right? So you know that dissolved oxygen is required. What is meant by dissolved oxygen? We know that some amount of oxygen is present in the dissolved form in water, and that is required. Creatures which are living in water, that needs oxygen for respiration. So we can say it is an important quality parameter in the water. If higher amount of dissolved oxygen is there, then it is said to be better quality water. Normal requirement is 4.7 milligrams of dissolved oxygen per liter of water. If there is a less oxygen, then that water can be said to be a polluted water, or we can say impure water. The Wrinkler or niodometric methods can be useful, and here we can have the Wrinkler methods. So in your practicals, or we can say, I have not seen whether it is on practicals or not, but this is the experimental part, and in this way the determination of dissolved oxygen by Winkler's method is possible. So here some procedural part is there. The reactions as per the experimental part, which is taken to you as per your syllabus, and in this way the result is to be given, because it is simple practical process, or simple practical we can say. Okay, I hope the entire topic is revised. As we know that 6 to 7 hours are to be spent on this topic, and we have taken it almost in 1 hour. So here it was the revision part. If you require
the topics in detail, then you can watch our channel Chemistry with SK.
If you like, you can subscribe also. So that's it guys. Thank you.